Hi everyone, it's Cathy Zielske. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I've got a fun and colorful card project that features a brand new word and shadow die set designed by me. And I'm using it today with some Distress Oxides, a stencil, a little glimmer paste, basically a potpourri of fun techniques, and it's very colorful, and I think you may like it. Let's take a look at the products. I've got a nice selection of Distress Oxide inks that I'll be using today. And here is my Proud of You word and shadow die. This die features the slab serif style of typography, and I've been creating a lot of these word and shadow combinations. And I really like having that shadow layer because it allows you to have some fun with the background. For the background, I'll be using a stencil. This is called Tap Dance, and a little bit of Nouveau glimmer paste to add some shine and shimmer to the project. I've got my palette knife, a little bit of Gina K Designs embossing ink, and some white embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. I'll use a few other things as we go, so let's jump into the blending. I'm using my life-changing blender brushes from Picket Fence Studios to add color to my cardstock. And I'm just working in rainbow order, layering them on, blending them together with the hope that I will emerge with a lovely blended panel of color. It doesn't have to be perfect, and the nice thing is with Distress Oxides is their consistency is pretty creamy, and I find that once you work over the areas a few times, you can really get them to blend nicely. And I'm just sticking with part of the rainbow, going from pinks into oranges, into yellows, and ending with green. Now my squeezed lemonade is a little dry. I'm gonna add some. I'm gonna have to juice that pad up, as they say. But I am using a piece of purple tape just to keep my fingerprints off the areas I've blended. Because of the pigment quality to this ink, it takes a while to dry, and you can leave fingerprints behind if you're not careful. If you want that look, great, but I personally did not want that look. So I'm just working over the color and blending it, going back in with that yellow to try to make that transition a little bit smoother. And that's it. One happy, colorful, blended panel. And once I go over this a little bit to get the blend a little smoother, I'm just going to set this aside and let it dry. Next, using one of my Waffle Flower A2 Layers dies, I'm going to cut a panel. So I have a perfectly trimmed panel for my project. Love that. And next, I'm going to add some of the glimmer paste. Now I've got a piece of purple tape on top and bottom, sticky side up. And I'm going to line my stencil up so that the dots are all even and straight all the way around. And I was going to use the glitter gel you see there on the left, but it was empty when I went to open it. So brought in the Nouveau glimmer paste in the Moonstone color. I'm going to load up the palette knife and then just press this down over the stencil with even strokes. Just fill in all of those holes with a nice layer of the glimmer paste. Once I have that spread out, then I'll go and scrape off the excess. Now sometimes I'll put it back in the pot and sometimes I won't, but the panel was dry enough that it wasn't picking up any of that color, and so back into the pot the paste goes. Then I carefully separated the stencil and pulled it straight up to reveal the pattern, and I let that dry for about an hour. While it was drying, it was time to work on the die cut sentiment, word, and shadow layers. So I cut out the shadow layer first. That is Dusty Rose from Gina K Designs. And next, I'm cutting out the word layers themselves from some Neenah Solar White 110 pound. I like the sturdiness of it. It gives a nice dimension when it's glued and stacked as well. So just poking those out. Poking out the centers, and there you have the Proud of You in 3 different pieces. I love that small of in the caps. But I'll die cut 2 more of those and then use liquid adhesive to add them to one another to create that wonderful stacked die look. I like this liquid glue. Sometimes I use spray glue, but I've been kind of going the liquid glue route because I'm not perfectly skilled at layering these and I screw it up a lot, and the liquid glue actually gives you just that little bit of playtime to wiggle and make sure that the die cuts are perfectly lined up before it adheres. And if you have any extra adhesive, you just kind of wipe it away with your finger. Once everything's glued and stacked, then I'm gluing the words onto the shadow layer. And again, the liquid glue gives me a little bit of time to wiggle and move and make sure everything's lined up. There's the U, and the last piece is to pop in the of. And now we have this beautiful dimensional sentiment. Proud of you. I'll pop an acrylic block on that and just let that set up. While that's drying, I'm going to use a sentiment, "You are doing a great job," from another stamp set that I designed called Good Job Mama. I will hit some black cardstock with embossing magic to get all the static or oil off of the cardstock, inking it up with some embossing ink, and give it a nice press. Not too hard, but even enough, because it's a very delicate little sentiment. I'm going to sprinkle on my powder, flick off the excess, and I'll take a brush to this as well just to get all the errant powder flakes off. And then my heat tool is nice and hot as I bring it to the paper, and it melts. This sentiment is really delicate, but if you don't get a great impression, don't be afraid to try it again. Just restamp. It's just paper. I'll use my sentiment labels to trim out this panel. I love this die set. Probably my most used die set. Easy peasy. Going to cut that out, and once that is cut, then I'm going to use the little tiny notch for the little banner edge. I just tape the piece into place, tape the notch into place, run that through, and then I get a great little cut, little fishtail, if you will, on my tiny little banner. Now I'm going to trim off the excess, and this is just a little tip if you ever have trouble trimming. This is how I do it on my Tonic guillotine. You want to line up your furthest letter over, so that in this case it's the Y. Line it up right on the guard, just like that, so the edge of your letter is lined up with the cutting guard. Hold down the cutting guard with both in both places. There are two places on this. And when you cut, it gives you this great cut that is perfectly spaced, just like that. Next, I'll work on my card base, and this is going to be a US A2 size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. This is a landscape orientation. I'll bring in my Teflon bone folder to press that crease down. I like the Teflon because it doesn't leave a mark at all on the paper. And then I'll tape this card base closed because I don't like it to pop up while I'm working on it. I need them to stay flat, and that helps do the job. I've got some foam tape on the back of my blended glimmered piece, and I'll just line that up on the card base with that beautiful framing edge of white margin all around, which I just think is so pretty. It just really makes the color pop. And then I'm popping up the word die with some thin foam adhesive, and that looks great. And that's the thing that's so fun about the word dies with the shadows, is that you can have whatever you want in the background and it's not going to affect the readability of the sentiment. Popping up the little banner right underneath, and that is the finished card project. It's pretty simple in design, but there's a lot of color going on and a little bit of shine and of course dimension with the sentiment title. Thanks so much for watching today. I would love to have you become a subscriber to my channel. And if you do subscribe, don't forget to hit the gray bell underneath the video so you get notified every time I post.